North Carolina in the middle of the postseason decided we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to wait, come back Division One, the whole application process of that. But it really puts the players in a bad spot right now. 2 months of pay, very little notice about going to get new clubs in the middle of a playoff run. How did that impact or alter the way that you guys are viewing negotiations now going into the expiration date on New Year's Eve?
I don't think that we had much awareness. As soon as basically we found out, we informed players. And that's probably the first domino in terms of this becoming more public. Um, I think from on one end, it hasn't had much of an impact. On another end, it has. I say not much of an impact because this has been historically an issue even before we had a first CBA of why players wanted to organize.
Hello, welcome to the United Soccer Lounge. My name is Riley James. Today on the show, we welcome Connor Tobin, the executive director of the USL Players Association, to kick off our off-season content. Connor and I talk all about the labor dispute going on right now, the negotiations, where they're at, and where they could be in the next couple of weeks as we inch closer and closer to the expiration on December 31st. Back in October, we did a show similar to this with John Morrissey, and we talked about the labor dispute, and we talked about, as the playoffs started, what this would mean going into the offseason. Well, we're here. So I think it's important to revisit the quotes that Connor gave to me. Quote, "Players have been clear. This league cannot call itself professional without professional standards. That means healthcare, safe working conditions, and fair compensation. Too many players are being asked to perform like professionals without being treated like professionals. That has to change. The league's success depends on its players, and right now players are asking for the bare minimum, a system that values their safety and their contribution. With the USL Championship playoffs about to start, fans will see the very best of the league on the field. Our work is to make sure that the same level of professionalism exists off the field too. Professional soccer cannot succeed without professional standards." Quote. So that leads us to now. We sit in December. The finals have been played. And a demonstration, a protest of sorts, was led by the players and the fans at the USL Championship final. Now, we were there, chatted with Eric Dick after the match. Thank you so much for the love and support on that interview. But the league's reaction seemingly was to cancel the trophy ceremony and the traditional trophy lift with the confetti and the arch and the banners. And it's golden promotional material that you use on every photo leading up to the next season, and the league just did away with it. And the league statement is the college football started and they had extra time and penalties, and they just ran out of television time. But the belief in the Players Association is that they canceled it based on the shirts that read Pro Rel Tri Pro Standards first. So, we'll have a discussion with Connor Tobin about that and plenty more coming up. But it's really important to be informed of this. At USL Players has done a fantastic job being able to break all this down from the player perspective, and there's plenty more to come in the news the next couple of weeks. But for now, here is Connor Tobin right here on Goals TV. Please welcome to the show a man tasked with leading the fight on the players' side for the USL labor negotiations. A former USL player himself, he's played for clubs on various levels like Rochester, North Carolina, Madison, and Vermont, and now he is the executive director of the USL Players Association. Please welcome to the program, Connor Tobin. Connor, thank you so much for making time, man. How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me on.
This has been a chaotic couple of weeks for everyone. I covered the playoffs, and a lot of journalists covered the playoffs, but you guys were working behind the scenes to be able to get this deal done, and we have still not had a resolution. So I'll ask you, because you sent me some quotes in October, and we used it for our show with John Morrissey. You mentioned fair pay, safer conditions, league-wide mandated health care were the important and main issues of this. Has that changed at all in the last couple of months?
No, I think we've been consistent throughout from a player perspective about what our uh, major concerns are. We've been negotiating this deal since August of 2024, and those three main tenets are continue to be what we're focused on.
Now, a lot of social media pressure, obviously a final that we'll talk about in just a moment that had some fans and some players wearing shirts and holding up signs. There's so much going around it, and people are talking about this now. We had major news outlets break this story and try to give some exposure to what you guys are trying to do. Has the social media and the media pressure from everyone impacted the league at all in these negotiations?
Uh, we have not had any substantive conversation since the final, so I can't speak to that.
We've seen the league's growth, right? And something you guys have talked about, and they want to go to promotion relegation. They want to go to Division One, and 2028 is like the goal, and start this whole process in 27. How does that factor into what you guys are doing? Obviously, the CBA has to be agreed on before that, in a couple years before that, but how does that impact what you guys are trying to go for with all the new changes that are coming just a couple years after the CBA is signed?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the league's put some things out there that are pretty big statements of intent, with both announcements. I think, you know, the Players Association and players, just like most fans, look at those and hey, this potentially is very exciting. Now, when you sit down with it, it's like this is going to alter what this business is. It's going to alter this idea of what is balance between employees and employers um, in this. And certainly when we're negotiating a collective bargaining agreement that's defining balance between those entities over a period of time, if this is going to overlap into that period of time, there's very much desire from a player end and from a PA perspective to understand. And I think fans can appreciate this. Well, what does this actually look like? And then the follow-up question to that is what's going to be the impact on the business so that we can actually get to an equitable balance between the entities on a moving forward basis.
And I asked John Morrissey about this. And I asked a couple of people about this off air, but I asked John on air. Is there a path forward where maybe you throw a band-aid on this for 2 years until we get there? Like, what does that look like from the player's side?
I think when collective bargaining, like there's all sorts of possibilities. I think, uh, particularly from an employer end, one of the benefits that you get in a collective bargaining agreement is you're getting predictability. Hey, what's my business going to look like? What are some of these costs going to look like? So usually, and it's more of a typical thing where employers usually desire more long-term contracts. I don't necessarily think that that's objectionable from a player perspective, provided again, this idea of balance through the course of that contract is equitable. Now, in this, the further out you go, the harder it is to know. So then it becomes, well, where is that idea of balance? Um, I think from a players association standpoint, we've engaged in conversations um, and tried to find middle ground with the league and its clubs around what is term and how does it impact with all these ideas. Um, I think the overriding thing from a player perspective and from an organizational perspective is, hey, we want to get to a deal that continues to move this league forward and does so in a balanced way.
Now, you had kind of a wrench thrown in this, and I don't know how much you guys knew this in advance, but North Carolina in the middle of the postseason decided we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to wait, come back Division One, the whole application process of that. But it really puts the players in a bad spot right now. 2 months of pay, very little notice about going to get new clubs in the middle of a playoff run. How did that impact or alter the way that you guys are viewing negotiations now going into the expiration date on New Year's Eve?
I don't think that we had much awareness. As soon as basically we found out, we informed players. And that's probably the first domino in terms of this becoming more public. I think from on one end, it hasn't had much of an impact. On another end, it has. I say not much of an impact because this has been historically an issue even before we had a first CBA of why players wanted to organize. When you go back to the days of Ottawa kind of going away, Reno going away, players are left at the time, guaranteed deals, the contracts, the way they were written, were amended to November 30th of that year. And your future years, you got nothing. That always felt not okay from a player perspective. So the first round of bargaining, and we actually spent years negotiating to get to 2 months. The From a league perspective, they were really worried that a lot of these situations could be potential bankruptcies and we'd be reordering the line of creditors. That's not something they've had much desire to do. Ultimately, we settled on 2 months, but in any collective bargaining agreement, you're dealing with not one issue, but 10, 20, 30, 50 issues. So for the sake of trying to move this thing forward, we agreed to that. Now, I think what the North Carolina situation did is it re-highlighted this is still substandard. To take someone who's, signed a multi-year guaranteed deal, oftentimes you might have your spouse or family, you want to be in a particular area, you're choosing stability. Sometimes you're making kind of trade-off decisions to say, hey, I'll take a long-term contract. I'll actually take less money because I know where I'm going to be.
Right.
And then to have the rug pulled out from underneath you, hey, immediately starting that off season, you might have housing costs that you've got to absorb. You've got to move, you got to deal with any moving expenses. 2 months doesn't go very far. On top of that, there's a whole kind of different situations for guys. I think when we start to think about this, like, what if you're injured towards the tail end of the season? It's a long-term injury. Okay. If I had a multi-year guaranteed deal and I'm rehabbing an ACL injury and my return to play dates in the middle of the next season, as I'm getting back to being healthy, I'm in a team environment. I'm training in a team environment. That certainly helps the recovery process. And then when I'm cleared, I actually still have a salary that I'm drawing. So I can fight for my spot to get back into a team, to show to other teams when I actually get to out of contract at the end of the following year, hey, I'm healthy. Like, give me a new contract. So there's continuity in terms of employment. In a situation like this, hey, I might be rehabbing. Sure, your rehab costs are going to be covered through work comp. Okay, but how efficient is that dealing with an insurance company to actually get taken care of? Okay, on top of that, you're doing that all on your own. You're not in a team environment. Getting back to a professional level of soccer in a non-team environment, tell me how easy that is. Oh, and the moment you actually get cleared, your work comp benefits stop. You've got to go find a contract. It's middle of the season. Teams have spent their money. There's not contracts out there in this league.
Right.
And then on top of that, even if you do find a contract, have you proven you've gotten back to full health? If a club's willing to offer you that contract, they're doing it for 100% of your quote unquote value, or is it at a reduced rate? So players are so disadvantaged in multiple ways. And there's other situations like this in these scenarios that, again, 2 months is not good enough. I would also say on top of that, hey, every single one of these situations that we've encountered over the last decade, I think we went back and looked at this across League One and Championship. It's been 19 of these. We haven't seen a single Chapter 7 or Chapter 11. These have all been owner choices. Okay. What's the owner's responsibility on this? But even when the owner makes the choice, what's the league's role in backstopping this? The league makes a choice. Again, the league's a privately held thing. They make a choice to allow these various owners in. Does the league backstop any of this? Or who gets stuck holding the bag on these things? Well, when we keep talking about balance, this is one of those issues that's such a good highlight that, hey, this is balance between league, clubs, and players. And how do we all come to the middle here? And how do we make this more equitable?
So what change are you wanting to see as far as the owners and who are allowed in? What's the standards of what we should hold owners to as far as the pre-process before they even get approved to buy a club? And then what's the checks and balances to keep them in line along the way so this kind of stuff doesn't happen?
I wouldn't say there's a ton of visibility into that. And that's from a player perspective, and that's from
Right.
an existing club perspective. There's not a ton of visibility into any of that stuff.
Which is, I think, maybe part of the problem is that we just don't know. And, other sports leagues in the United States have a little bit more view into those things, and USL maybe doesn't as much. Um, so, to put a bow on this, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you hanging out with us. We're getting closer and closer to that 2026 deadline, and for you guys to be able to come to an agreement. What is the official stance of where you guys are at as far as the hashtag stand up for standards obviously was pushed so hard? What is the message to the fans and to the players as we get to the expiration date?
we're at an inflection point, not just for this league, but for this sport in this country. This is something that I think is on the front edge of that. This really matters. It's an important negotiation. Clearly, there's distance between the sides. I know I can speak fully from the player end. Hey, we have a desire to get to a deal, but that deal needs to be equitable. I hope from the other entities involved with this, there's a similar sort of intent and a recognition of like, we actually need to meet in a place that starts to consider the human impact of these things. And hopefully we can get to a deal and continue to move forward and grow in the sport and the USL itself.
I ask you, like you said, you've been working on this since last year. Has there been any progress and any significant process in recent months that makes you hopeful for a deal?
Yeah, I mean, negotiations, everyone's different. Particularly, ours are complicated given that there's kind of three entities here.
Right.
That makes that difficult. The fact that a lot of this unfolds digitally is also difficult. So there's always kind of a journey through each deal, and it kind of ebbs and flows. I think we're in a moment where, hey, we feel like it's not in a good spot. Certainly, what happened at the final, I think, is a reflection of that. Where, from a player point of view, they felt like there was a need to use our voice in a different way. That doesn't mean that, hey, there's not a deal to get done. But again, it kind of comes back to everyone who's coming to the table and partaking in this. What is the mind frame that you're bringing to this? What's the level of respect that you're bringing to the conversation? And how do we actually define balance?
It's funny you bring up the final. We were both there. Obviously didn't cross paths. Wish we would have been able to have these conversations in person because I think it's incredibly important what you guys are doing. And I mean, obviously the protest before and the cancellation of the trophy ceremony. What was your reaction in real time to that, and how do you feel like it's impacted kind of the ramp up process to the expiration?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a player and how the conversation is unfolded and bargaining the last couple of weeks, this wasn't something that was quote unquote premeditated. It was more, hey, the last few sessions leading up into that weekend was like, hey, like we're not getting anywhere. Like this is not going in a place where we as players um, are happy. So let's use our voice. Obviously, I think it's a piece with both the Tulsa players and the Pittsburgh players. Um, the willingness to use their voice, I don't think can be overlooked. The willingness to carry the banner on behalf of all players cannot be overlooked. Um, Obviously, there is a reaction to that. I can't speak to the intent behind that or the thought process, but what I can say, and having enough conversations with the players from both teams, the reaction in terms of not going through a more traditional trophy ceremony, going through kind of what everyone would expect as a professional celebration of a club winning the championship is highly disappointing from a player perspective. I think it does a disservice to the level of professionalism that players bring to the table to have it met like that. So I think from a human standpoint, that reaction, again, is disappointing and maybe somewhat indicative of why in the first place players feel like they need to use their voice.
And it even more of a shot. I was talking to some players after the fact. They watched Knoxville do it the week before in the
Yeah.
third division, and you guys even had an Instagram post about that, where you look at Knoxville and you see the traditional trophy lift and the confetti and the banner and the arch, and then you look at Pittsburgh and it's a little less than that, and you just wouldn't expect that from a third division to a second division if everything was equal and everyone was feeling the post game celebration, which obviously it wasn't. Last thing I'll ask you, thank you so much for coming to hang out. What is our worst case scenario, Connor?
I don't know. I mean, there's still so many twists and turns of how this thing could develop that it's really hard to speak to that. Um, And again, I'm not someone that likes to sit here and focus on doomsday or anything like that. I think I'd rather focus on how do we get this unlocked and how do we get to something that it can, again, continues to move this sport forward, continues on a path of growth, but it does so in an equitable way to all the parties involved.
Well, you have a lot of support from, the fans, and obviously the players want to get this done. Yeah, the media does not want this whole process to spill out into the new year. So hopefully, you guys get a deal done. Best of luck doing that, and thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it, really.
Thank you so much to Connor for his time. Orchestrating that in the middle of a travel day, it's very chaotic, and I can appreciate and understand that with my travels the last year. So super, super thankful he did that for us. This is a massively important moment for USL. And I feel like we say that all the time, and we do say it all the time. But right now, at the end of 25, going into 26, a World Cup is coming to our shores. I'm sure you probably heard about that. We've certainly talked about it on this show a ton. And promotion relegation starts in 27 with a resolution to that in 28, as hopefully they switch to the fall to spring calendar, just like the rest of the world. But to be able to have a deal, a security blanket going into that time is the most important thing for the players. And they know that. Connor, every answer he gave lends itself to this is really important to have for this time. And I appreciate him doing that. And, as we get closer and closer to the expiration date, it dawns more on me and how vital this is for the future of American soccer and how vital it is for the future of USL as we enter in what could be a golden period for the league and for soccer in this country. That'll do it for us. Heavy show to start off our all-season content. We have a fantastic one coming up in a couple weeks. I went to Dallas to chat with the co-owners and co-founders of Atletico Dallas at a party that they invited us to. So that comes out in just a few weeks, and that'll be the last time we talk this year. We'll come back in 26. We have fantastic content sprinkled out through January, and then we're back at it for Season 3 in February. If you like this show, you can get in touch with us. I'm at Rel James IAC on Instagram and X. The Instagram account for this show is at US on Goals. The parent company is at goals.tv on Instagram, at goals_TV on X, and Goals TV on YouTube. That'll do it for us. Thank you so much for watching our show. For Connor Tobin, I'm Riley James. If anyone cares, we'll see you in a couple weeks.